Hey everyone, it's Sean. So on the last All English episode, we talked about time travel and we focused on a fixed timeline where time cannot be changed and the dynamic timeline where things can be changed and they have an impact on the future. So today we're going to look at one of my favorite types of time travel, but it's a very complicated one and a little bit difficult to understand. So you might have to listen to this episode maybe 2 or 3 times, I think. So let's jump straight into it. Let's find out more about time travel. Okay, so today I want to focus on a different type of time travel, which is called the multiverse. Multiverse is M-U-L-T-I, verse, V-E-R-S-E. So that's one word, multiverse. This is a portmanteau. A portmanteau is a combination of 2 words. So, for example, pocket monsters, Pokemon, right? Multiverse is multiple universes or parallel universes. So the multiverse idea means that when you travel back in time and you change something, the original timeline still continues and doesn't change. That one still exists and nothing has changed. But what happens is you have now created a new timeline. Like it branches off. So if you imagine a piece of paper and you draw a straight line straight through the middle, that is the main timeline. That is your timeline where you've come from. Now, if you jump back in time, so find a point on that line, now if you draw a line straight down or straight up, whichever way, what you have done now is you've created a new alternative timeline. That means that the original one still stays the same, but what you've done is create a new version of time. So with this type of time travel, you can do whatever you want because it doesn't impact the main timeline. All you've done is created a new multiverse, right? A new universe. This is a common theme which is used in the TV show Doctor Who. Doctor Who is a very popular British TV show about a time traveller, and he travels through time through multiverses. So he will jump to this universe and it will be different to the previous one. And he's not changing time. So in the last episode, we looked at something called paradoxes. And paradoxes is a contradiction of something. And with paradoxes, these can be avoided with the multiverse theory. So in the last episode, we talked about the idea, what if you travel back in time to kill your parents? How can you be born to then go back in time to kill your parents? It's a paradox, right? But with the multiverse theory, it doesn't matter if you go back in time and kill your parents. Well, obviously it does matter because that's a terrible thing to do. But I mean, it doesn't impact that main timeline. That main timeline still exists where your parents are alive, but now you've created a new timeline where both of your parents have been killed by you. So that hasn't changed the main timeline. So time travel actually creates a new timeline that moves away from the original. And it can happen from the moment that the time traveler arrives in the past, or it can happen when the time traveler changes something. But whatever that moment is, you create this new branch. The main problem with the multiverse theory is that it's almost impossible to get back to that original timeline that you came from. So be careful, guys. If you time travel, make sure you don't accidentally create a new universe by changing something, because you'll never be able to get back to this timeline. A really good example of this was in the new Marvel movie, Avengers Endgame. So again, spoiler warning, if you haven't watched Avengers Endgame yet, I'm going to talk about the plot now, so maybe skip a couple of seconds into the podcast. So I'm going to talk about Avengers Endgame for a moment. So in Avengers Endgame, the heroes, Iron Man, Captain America, they travel back in time at different points in time to collect the Infinity Stones so that they can jump back to the future and use those Infinity Stones to defeat Thanos, the bad guy. Now, lots of my friends who watched this movie, they said that it was a very cheap way for the heroes to win, and they felt like time travel was kind of cheating to fix the bad things that happened in the previous movie. But I think what this was doing was actually introducing a way, well, this was a way to introduce the multiverse into the Marvel movies, because the multiverse already exists in the comic books, but it doesn't exist in the movies yet. So this was a good way for them to introduce it, because in the comic books, there are variations of each hero. So, for example, we have Spider-Man. In another universe, there's his girlfriend, Spider-Gwen. There's Spider-Ham, who is the pig version of Spider-Man. Spider-Man Noir, who is like a dark version of Spider-Man. So all of these characters, they exist in their own timelines, in their own universes, and they don't know about each other. They don't know about the other universes. But all of these universes are existing at the same time. They just branch off like a tree. They don't know about each other, but they all think that they are their own original timeline, right? So with this theory, there are an infinite number of timelines. Infinite is INFINITE. And with infinite numbers, there is no limit, there is no end. So let's say, for example, in the past, there was a job that you didn't take. You didn't like the salary, for example, and you said, oh, I'm not going to take that job. But there exists a universe where you did take that job. And now your other universe self is probably still in that job, living their own life. Or maybe there was one day that you missed the bus or the train. In another universe, you caught that bus, you caught that train. And maybe on the train, you met your love of your life or something, and you got married, right? So that timeline exists in another universe, but we just can't experience it because we are in our universe where we missed the train or we missed the bus. So we can't experience what happened in that timeline. Going back to Marvel, I know, I talk about Marvel a lot. Marvel has just made a new TV show called Loki. And lots of the listeners of the台本なし英会話レッスン podcast have messaged me talking about this and saying, oh, it's confusing, I don't understand, what kind of time travel is this? So, with Loki, it's continuing from Avengers Endgame. So in Endgame, where the heroes created these new timelines, these new branches by taking the Infinity Stones from those timelines, what has happened is a timeline branches off in another direction. So we talked about this in the last episode with the dynamic timeline, where it changes as soon as it happens in the past. Now, in the TV show Loki, what's happening is there is one main timeline, which is this dynamic timeline, which is what they call the sacred timeline, where there's only one time of events. And there is no multiverse, there is no branches or anything like that, because all of these branches get destroyed by this time-traveling company called the TVA, the Time Variance Association, the Time Variance Authority, and their job is to stop these branches of the multiverse so that there is only one timeline. And what happens, again, spoilers, is that eventually it's impossible for them to stop these timelines from happening. And what happens towards the end of the show is that we get this branching of the timelines, which is what creates this multiverse. And now we've got all of these potential stories of what could happen. So there's also another new show coming out soon called What If? And this show actually explores the idea of what if this happened instead of this event. For example, we know that Captain America takes the super soldier serum to become Captain America. But what if somebody else had that super soldier serum? What would happen with that person? So it's always interesting to think about the multiverse theory, because we can think about, well, what if I had done that? Or what if I had changed that? How would my life be different? You can kind of go a little bit crazy if you overthink it too much, oh, what if I had caught that train? Or what if I had taken that job? And imagining these possibilities. But it's kind of fun to think about somewhere out there is another universe where you did take that job or you did catch that train, and how would your life be different, and trying to imagine how that would be different, right? So, for example, there is a universe out there where I never came to Japan, and there is a universe out there where there is no Daihon Nashi Eikaiwa Lesson podcast. Oh my gosh, yeah, it's horrible to think about, but luckily there is a Daihon Nashi Eikaiwa podcast that you can listen to. So, what did you think about the multiverse theory? Did you prefer it to the dynamic timeline or the fixed timeline theory that we talked about last time? Let me know what you thought about the multiverse theory. You can follow me on Instagram at Sean Bradley 1986. Let me know in the comments what you think about the multiverse theory. Let me know if you've watched Avengers Endgame or Loki, and let me know if this podcast helped you to understand it a little bit better. And next time, in the next episode, we're going to look at some other types of time travel and maybe look at, can time travel really happen? So, see you guys next time. Bye bye.